That Tuesday morning didn't begin like any of the others I'd known. It felt hollow, wrong, as if the house itself had stopped breathing. There was no clatter of dishes, no smell of coffee, no sound of my brother fighting his alarm. Just silence. The kind that hums in your ears until your own heartbeat feels too loud. I swung my legs off the bed, still half asleep, calling down the hall. "Mom? Dad?" My voice came back to me, sharp and small. I pulled on jeans, walked through the hallway expecting to hear someone answer, but there was nothing. The kitchen light was off, the coffee maker empty. My father's work shoes, usually by the door, were gone. That's when the unease began to crawl up my spine. At first I thought maybe they'd gone out early, a quick errand or a doctor's appointment. But then, the pictures. The walls were bare, entire sections of our life gone between one day and the next. I ran into the living room. The couch, the curtains, the television. Everything had vanished, leaving rectangular shadows on the walls where frames used to hang. I called again, louder this time. No answer. Then I ran. My parents' bedroom door stood open, and what waited inside could only be described as emptiness wearing our name. No bed, no clothes, not even the smell of candles my mother always kept burning on her dresser. I stumbled to my brother's room. Bare walls, stripped shelves, a few papers fluttering near the vent. All I could hear was the sound of my own breathing pound in my ears. And then I saw it. A single piece of paper on the refrigerator, held by a chipped yellow magnet. I knew that handwriting before I even touched it, my mother's neat curves and loops. We moved. "You're 18 now. You'll find a way." Good luck. That was it. No address, no number. Just those words and the echo they left behind. I must have read it 10 times, hoping the meaning would change. My fingers trembled as I dialed their numbers, one after another. "The number you are trying to reach has been disconnected." Father. Disconnected. Mother. Disconnected. Brother. Disconnected. Gone. I slid to the floor against the cabinet, the note crumpling in my hand as reality sank its teeth in. They were gone, by choice. The people who'd promised me forever had simply erased me like chalk off a board. Over the next days, I learned the rest, each truth like another cut. My aunt, nervous and stammering, confirmed it. My family had planned the move for nearly 3 months. They'd packed while I was at college, lied to relatives, and vanished before sunrise. "They said you're grown now," my aunt whispered, "that you'll know how to manage." Her words tasted like betrayal. The landlord called 2 days later. "Your father ended the lease. You've got 10 days to vacate." 10 days, $300 in my account, one collapse of a teenage world. I cried until there were no tears left, sitting on the floor of my bare bedroom because it was the only corner of the house they hadn't touched. I kept asking the same question that no one could answer. What did I do that made me so easy to leave? But by the 5th morning, the crying stopped. Not because I'd healed, but because something else had taken its place. Resolve, small but fierce. If they wanted to believe I would fail, then I would make success my revenge. I pulled myself together, wiped my face, and started calling every friend I had. One girl from college, Amy, said I could crash on her couch for a few weeks. I packed what little was left, books, a handful of clothes, my old laptop that barely booted up, and stuffed the note from the fridge into my backpack. I didn't know why, just that I wasn't leaving it behind. Over the next days, I sold everything that could buy me another day of survival. My bike, my game console, cheap jewelry, $1,000 scraped together from pawning the past. Then began the job hunt. I printed 50 resumes, handed them to everyone who would take one. Supermarkets, clothing stores, gas stations, cafes. 2 weeks of rejection later, A small clothing shop finally said yes. 12-hour shifts, minimum wage, aching feet, but it was a yes. That first Friday, when I stood behind the counter counting my pay, less than $100, it might as well have been treasure. My life had hit zero, and still I was moving. Days blurred into an exhausting routine. Work from 9 to 6. College at night. Homework on buses. Sleep 4, sometimes 5 hours at most. Weekends I served at weddings and birthday parties for extra cash, balancing trays heavier than my body wanted to handle. It wasn't living. It was surviving. But it was mine. Every sore muscle proved they hadn't broken me. 3 months later, I managed to rent a single room in a house with 4 strangers. The walls were thin, the water heater temperamental, but the rent was paid with money I had earned. I lay that night on a squeaky mattress in a room the size of my old closet and smiled anyway, because for the first time, my life couldn't be taken from me. A year passed. I climbed 2 positions at the clothing store, my manager noticing the way I handled customers like a second skin. Promotions brought small raises, but inside those small numbers hid something huge: independence. I bought myself a used laptop, learned everything I could about digital marketing and sales from free courses. On my lunch breaks, I watched online lectures. At night, I applied them. 2 years after the morning I'd woken up to that brutal silence, an opportunity arrived like a door cracking open. A tech company downtown needed a marketing assistant. My resume was modest, my confidence thin, but I sent it anyway. The interview was short. They called the next day. When can you start? When I signed the new contract, the paycheck doubled overnight. I left the shared house and moved into a small studio. White walls, cheap furniture, but sunlight streaming through wide windows that made even exhaustion look hopeful. Classes got harder, sleep got shorter. But on the nights I wanted to quit, I opened the notebook where I had pressed that old crumpled note. We moved. You're 18 now. You'll find a way. And I smiled, not with bitterness, but with quiet triumph. Because they were right about one thing. I did find a way. In my 3rd year, something happened that changed everything. One of my professors saw potential in me. Andre commended me for an internship at a big company. It was paid well, and best off all, it was in my field of study. I quit my other job and accepted the internship. For the next 6 months, I dedicated myself like never before. I arrived early, stayed late, asked questions, and learned everything I could, and it worked. At the end of the internship, they offered me a full-time position. When I signed my employment contract with a salary 3 times higher than my first job, I stopped and looked back at how far I'd come, from a note on a fridge to this, alone. And I was succeeding. I graduated from college at 23. I was the only one in my class who'd worked full-time throughout the entire program. On graduation day, I sat alone in the audience. No family to celebrate with, but I didn't feel alone. I felt proud. Over the next few years, I kept growing. I was promoted. My salary increased. I moved to a bigger apartment. I made real friends who became my chosen family. I met an amazing woman who supported me in everything. My life was finally on track. 5 years after being abandoned, I had a stable career, a nice apartment, a car, and I was happy. I'm really happy. And most importantly, I'd achieved all of this alone without the help of the people who'd left me behind. 10 years after that Tuesday morning when I was 28 years old, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello. On the other end of the line, a voice I hadn't heard in a decade. Sophia, it's Mom. She said it casually, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't abandoned me 10 years ago, like it was normal to call out of nowhere after all this time. I wassled for a few seconds processing. How did you get my number? I finally asked. I asked your aunt, she said. Then she started talking, saying she missed me, that she wanted to see me, that the whole family wanted to see me, that my brother, who was now 25, asked about me all the time, that my father wanted to talk too. I let her speak. I didn't interrupt. I just listened. She talked for about 5 minutes about their lives, the city where they lived, my father's new job, my brother's college graduation, but she never mentioned the note. The abandonment. Nothing. When she finally stopped and asked how I was, I took a deep breath. "I'm fine," I said. "Very fine, without your help." Silence. Then Shetrid to explain. She said they did it to help me grow, to make me independent, that it was hard for them too, that they thought about me every day. I almost laughed. "If you thought about me every day," I said slowly, "why didn't you ever call? Why didn't you ever send a message? Why did you completely disappear?" She stammered. I tried to explain, but there was no real explanation. Then she got to the point. She said they were visiting my city in 2 weeks, and they wanted to meet for lunch to get the family back together. The family, as if we were still a family. I could have hung up on her, could have cursed her out, could have screamed everything I'd been holding in for 10 years. But you know what I did? I agreed. I said I'd meet them next Saturday, noon, at a restaurant downtown. The days leading up to that Saturday, my head wouldn't stop spinning. I kept thinking about what I was going to say, how I was going to react when I saw them. I told my girlfriend, and she said she'd come with me if I wanted. I wanted to. I needed someone by my side. Saturday came. I arrived at the restaurant 5 minutes early. My heart was racing. Then I saw them walk in. My father, my mother, my brother, they'd aged. My brother was a grown man now, tall and broad-shouldered. They saw me and smiled. My mother came to hug me. I let her, but it was a cold hug. She noticed. My father shook my hand and said, I looked good, that I'd grown up. My brother was awkward, but he greeted me too. I introduced my girlfriend, and Will sat down. The first few minutes were strange. They asked about my life, my job, where I lived. I answered, but briefly. I didn't want to give them too many details. I didn't want them to feel like they were part of my success because they weren't. Then my father started talking about how hard it had been for them too, how the move was necessary for work, how they had no choice, how they hoped I understood that it was all for my own good. For my own good. That's when I couldn't hold back anymore. I looked him in the eyes and asked, how can you abandon an 18-year-old without warning, without support, without options? How was that for my own good? The restaurant went quiet. My father tried to answer, but I raised my hand. I'm not finished, I said. I was hungry in those first few months. I slept on a friend's couch. I worked 3 jobs at once just to survive. I cried alone more times than I can count. My mother started crying, but I continued. I graduated alone. I got my job alone. I built my life alone. And building my life alone. Everything I have today isn't thanks to you. It's despite you. It's because I refused to give up when you gave up on May. My brother was staring at the table. I asked him if he'd known they were going to leave me. No, he said quietly. I only found out on the way. I asked about you. They said you were staying because you were older. At least he wasn't to blame. Then my father tried to defend himself. Said they thought I'd be okay. That I was always independent. That they trusted me. I laughed. A bitter, angry laugh. Trust, I said, isn't about leaving someone with no money, no structure, and no goodbye. I reached into my bag and pulled out my wallet. From it, I took out a folded piece of paper. The note? Yes, I still had that note. I placed it on the table in front of them. Do you remember this? I said. You're 18 now. You'll find a way. Good luck. Is that what you called trust? My mother picked up the note with trembling hands, and she started crying harder. I regret it every day, she whispered. It was a mistake. I didn't know what else to do. My father said he regretted it too, that he wanted a chance to fix things. I took a deep breath. I looked at my girlfriend, who squeezed my hand under the table, and then I told them the truth. I forgive you, I said. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. Carrying this anger for 10 years has been eating me alive. They looked relieved, but I wasn't finished. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean we're going to be a happy family again. What you did left scars that will never disappear, and I need you to understand the gravity of what you did. I said I was willing to try to have some kind of contact, but with boundaries, that they'd need to earn my trust back little by little, and that it would take time, maybe years, maybe forever. They agreed. They had no choice. Lunch ended heavy, but necessary. We said goodbye without big hugs, just a simple goodbye. I went home with my girlfriend and collapsed on the couch. It had been intense, but it was also liberating. I'd said everything I needed to say. In the months that followed, they tried to keep in touch. Messages here and there, occasional calls. I answered, but kept my distance. It wasn't cold, but it wasn't warm either. It was polite. It was what I could offer. Today, 3 years after that lunch, we have some contact. We talk sometimes, but it's not the same. It will never be. And I've learned to accept that some things in life can't be fixed. There's only acceptance. What did I learn from all this? That family isn't just blood. It's presence. It's support. It's being there when someone needs you. My family today is my friends, my girlfriend, the people who chose to stay when they could have left. And that's worth so much more. I also learned that pain can be transformed. That abandonment could have destroyed me. But I chose to use it as fuel. I chose to prove I was stronger than any obstacle. And I did it. And none can ever take that away from me. Now here's my honest take. Sophia did the right thing. She forgave them, not because they deserved it, but because she deserved peace. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back to the way things were. Her parents made a choice that scarred her for life. And while she's willing to have limited contact, she's not obligated to rebuild that relationship. What do you think? Should she have cut them off completely, or was giving them a second chance the right move? Drop your honest opinion in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories about people who survived being abandoned and came out stronger. Remember, you don't owe toxic people your forgiveness just because they're family. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.